At 2200 hours, on February 7, 2018, an Air Force combat controller at the Conoco gas plant in eastern Syria is watching a drone feed of pro-Assad armor forming up across the Euphrates. The deconfliction line is always held. But what he didn't know was that the Russian Wagner Group has just decided the line means nothing. Within minutes, the first 122mm round drops 200 meters short of the outpost. The second one goes long, and the third splits the difference. The drone feed pulls in tighter on the column rolling out of the tree line. 3 T-72 main battle tanks lead the formation. Behind them, BMPs and BRDMs, Soviet area armored troop carriers and scout cars, howitzers, and BM-21 Grad rocket launchers stretch 2 kilometers down the road. 500 fighters move in a screen across a Russian-built pontoon bridge toward Khasham. Inside the outpost, 30 American operators stop what they're doing and look at each other. 16-1. Machine guns and rockets against tanks. A math problem that doesn't have a polite answer. The Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar gets a Russian liaison officer in Deir ez-Zor on the secure line and asks one question. Is that you? The voice on the other end is flat. That's not us. Around the outpost, rounds keep walking onto the operations center. The American voice on the next call is calm in a way that suggests what comes next will not be. The next call I make is to tell you we're taking action. The Russian gives the most consequential lie of the Syrian Civil War. That's not us. West of the Euphrates, a Wagner field commander watches the artillery walking into the outpost on his forward observer's feed. 500 men against 30 operators with no tanks means the plant flies the Syrian flag by 0200. He knows the Americans run a surveillance drone over the stretch most nights, unarmed, just the camera, and decides it doesn't matter. What he doesn't know? Tonight the drone has 4 Hellfires hanging under its wings, and Qatar already cleared the operator hot. A round detonates 30 meters from the combat controller's foxhole and dirt rains on his helmet. If those guns keep walking for another 3 minutes, foxholes start taking direct hits. 2 seconds later, he hears the words, "cleared hot," and the only U.S. bird in the sky pivots onto its first target. A Hellfire missile screams down out of the night onto the M30 howitzer that fired the round near the foxhole. 3 seconds later, a second Hellfire drops onto a BM-21 Grad rocket launcher 2 kilometers north. The launcher's 42 rack ignites in sympathetic detonation, and every remaining rocket cooks off and corkscrews into the desert at random angles. The third Hellfire takes the BRD-M2 spotting for the Grad, and the fourth finds a second M30 in the tree line. If you look here at what just hit 4 targets in 30 seconds, that is an MQ-9 Reaper at 25,000 feet. The operator is in a trailer at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, 6 time zones away from the desert he just rearranged. The Reaper is a 36-foot-long remotely piloted aircraft with a sensor turret bolted under its nose, daylight camera, thermal imager, and laser designator that can pick out a license plate from miles up. The operator just used all 3 to put 4 Hellfires on 4 moving targets at 3 in the morning, probably between sips of coffee and bites from a gas station burrito. Think of it as a guy at a bar with 4 darts and a perfect arm. 4 bullseyes, then he's done. 4 Hellfires against 3 T-72s and 6 artillery pieces means the Reaper's job is triage. Silence the artillery first, because that's what reaches the foxholes. Worry about the tanks second. 2 artillery pieces, scrap. 1 Grad, scrap. 1 BRDM, scrap. Reaper Winchester. Out of weapons, the drone climbs to keep watching while another aircraft is on the way in. The bracketing fire on the outpost stops cold, but the lead T-72s are still rolling. The gunner on the north berm opens up on the lead tank with his M2 Browning at 1,800 meters. If those tanks reach 1,000 meters, their main guns finish the outpost. He's walking tracers across the turret roof, hunting the gunner's primary sight on the manlet and the commander's panoramic sight on top. The round sparks off the sight housing, another goes long, and a third smacks the radio antenna at the rear deck and folds it sideways. 2 berms over, a second 50 cal opens up on the same tank, this time chasing the driver's vision blocks. The rounds bounce off, less penetrating power than a strongly worded letter. But the next burst climbs into the smoke grenade launchers on the turret. One detonates prematurely and hides the tank inside its own smoke for 30 seconds. If you look here at where the operator is putting his rounds, he's not trying to destroy this tank because he can't. A T-72's frontal armor is roughly 500 millimeters of composite equivalent protection, designed to defeat NATO tank rounds. A 50 cal armor-piercing round packs less than 1% of the energy of a tank cannon shell, sparks off the armor, and goes somewhere else. Imagine fighting a knight full of plate armor. You can't punch through the chest plate, but the eye slits and the shoulder joints are wide open. You don't beat the knight by hitting him harder, you blind him. The lead T-72's antenna is gone and tracers are still hunting the optics. Its commander buttons up to protect what he has left, and the tank rolls slower now and drifts north. The two trail T-72s are still on course at 1,400 meters and closing. The combat controller, behind a berm with his radio and a lot of professional concerns, makes the call that defines the next 45 minutes. 3 letters: TIC. Troops in contact, the verbal equivalent of pulling the fire alarm at the Pentagon. Within 10 minutes, every fast mover, gunship, and helicopter within 400 miles will be turning toward Khasham. 2 AH-64E Apaches are racing from the south, call signs Raven 2-1 and Raven 2-2, 80 feet off the deck and carving between sand berms at 130 knots. The lead pilot pops the nose up behind a ridgeline 2 kilometers from the lead T-72 and pickles a Hellfire off the inboard pylon. The missile drops away and ignites, but it doesn't fly toward the tank. It climbs 1,200 feet up, then tips over. The Hellfire dives onto the T-72's turret roof at 950 miles per hour, 80 millimeters of steel plate, a quarter the thickness of the frontal armor, meets a shaped-charged warhead. The penetrator jet punches through the roof and into the autoloader carousel directly below, and every propellant charge cooks off in less than a second. The turret separates from the chassis and lands 15 meters behind the tank. Raven 2-1 is back behind the ridgeline before the turret comes down. Raven 2-2 pops up from a different berm with the same profile, and a second T-72 ends up with its turret vertical. What just took out 2 tanks in under 90 seconds? The AH-64E Apache Guardian, 18,000 pounds of armored helicopter built around a 30mm chain gun, 16 Hellfires, and a millimeter wave radar that picks out vehicles through dust and smoke. 190 knots top speed. Dallas to Fort Worth in 11 minutes. Crew of 2. Pilot up front, gunner behind him with the worst best office view in the Army. If you look here at how those missiles attack the tanks, the Apache pilots are not trying to punch through the front armor either. The M142 Hellfire is a 100-pound air-to-ground missile with 2 shaped charges stacked nose to tail, a small precursor to defeat reactive armor, then a main jet to punch through whatever's behind it. After the pilot fires, the missile climbs to roughly 1,000 feet, noses over, and dives on the target from above. It hits the turret roof through 70 to 80 millimeters of plate, less than 1/10 of what protects the front. Same gaps in the armor principle as the 50 cals on the berm, just hitting a different gap. And the T-72 keeps its propellant in a carousel inside the turret where the pressure has nowhere to go but up. Raven 2-1 and Raven 2-2 keep working in pairs, popping up to lock and fire and dropping back behind the berms before anyone can shoot back. Each pop-up takes another vehicle off the board. 3 T-72 wrecks, plus BMPs and BRDMs in under 3 minutes. But Wagner has been watching. Raven 2-1 claws out of its 4th pop-up at 200 feet above ground. From the wreckage of a destroyed BMP, 2 figures move. One of them shoulders a green tube the size of a fishing pole. A flash from the back of the tube. A missile leaps out and goes supersonic before the launcher hits the ground. The Apache's missile warning sensors catch the launch plume in ultraviolet, a flash so bright that a wavelength that the system already knows where the launch came from. He punches a program of 6 M211 decoy flares and banks hard left at 3.5 Gs. The missile finds a flare burning hotter than the engine exhaust and detonates 40 meters off the tail rotor. Shrapnel through the tail boom, a piece through a rotor blade. He can still fly it. A second missile fires from the same wreckage 30 seconds later. If a missile catches up at this altitude, the airframe doesn't survive. Raven 2-2 sees it coming, breaks into the missile, dispenses flares, and gets the same near miss. Both Apaches are still flying, and the Wagner team is about to find out what an AC-130 does to a tree line. What just chased the Apaches? A 9K38 Igla-S. The Russian shoulder-fired SAM Wagner has been smuggling into Syria since 2015. 39 pounds total, 2-man carry, 30 seconds to set up, 6-kilometer reach. Its seeker watches 2 infrared wavelengths, which makes flares harder to fool than older Iglas. Think of it as a seeker watching 2 TV channels at once. Older missiles only watched 1, so a bright flare changed the channel. The newer Igla checks both. The flares worked tonight because the Apache's hard brake forced the seeker to choose between 2 heat sources fading fast in a split second, and it grabbed the brighter one. Wagner did not fire blind. They watched 4 Apache pop-ups from behind the same ridgeline and moved early to a wreckage site where the helicopters would have to pop up next. Both Apaches climbed to 1,500 feet above the Igla envelope. The pop-up rhythm is broken and they're putting fewer rounds on target per minute, but they're still in the fight. 25 kilometers south of the plant, 6 rockets streak out of an M142 launcher pod in 4.8 seconds. Bright tails climb into the night sky and arc northeast. 45 seconds later, 6 200-pound unitary warheads detonate across a secondary Wagner column trying to flank from the north. The first 2 rockets take the lead and trail vehicles to box the column in, and the next 4 walk down the middle. What was a column 10 seconds ago is now scattered scrap and craters. If you look here at what just hit that flanking column, that is an M142 HIMARS battery firing from a Marine artillery position 25 kilometers south. HIMARS is a 5-ton truck with a 6-tube rocket pod on the back. Each guided multiple launch rocket system round, GMLRS for short, carries a 200-pound unitary warhead, GPS guided with a 70-kilometer range, DC to Baltimore, and accuracy inside 5 meters of the aim point. Phone map pin guidance, but the pin is on a moving truck. It's a rifle that fires SUVs. 6 rounds at roughly $100,000 each just erased a column worth $10 million in Soviet armor. Your tax dollars working overtime. Wagner brought tanks. Marines brought a truck. Truck wins. The Apaches are pulling off station, with Raven 2-1 at half ammunition and Raven 2-2 at bingo fuel. 200 dismounted Wagner attackers are still inside 1 kilometer of the operator's berm, advancing on foot through the wreckage of their own armor. The combat controller looks up expecting bad news. What he gets instead is a 4-engine turboprop he's been hearing for 2 minutes, carving a slow left-hand banking turn at 12,000 feet. And the entire desert is about to learn what a flying artillery piece sounds like at 3 o'clock in the morning. A cluster of 20 Wagner dismounts is stalking through the wreckage of a destroyed BMP toward the outpost berm at 700 meters. They're spread out and using cover. They've shrugged off everything the Apaches and HIMARS have done so far. Then, the desert around them detonates. A line of impacts across their position, 30 rounds in less than 2 seconds, each one detonating with a snap the combat controller can hear from 700 meters away. The advance breaks before reaching the next piece of cover. A heartbeat later, a BMP sitting in a wadi 1,200 meters west takes a single round through the vehicle. The hatch goes vertical while the chassis slumps where it was. 2 targets, different weapons, same aircraft, and the aircraft is still circling. The aircraft doing all of this is an AC-130U Spooky gunship, call sign Grim 11. The airframe is a C-130 Hercules with its left side cut open and replaced with 3 guns and one of the most sophisticated targeting suites ever bolted onto a turboprop. Think of it as a flying gun store doing laps around your house, and the owner gets to pick which shelf to grab from. If you look here at the cannons running down the left side of the fuselage, there are 3 of them in a line. The first is a 25mm GAU-12 equalizer Gatling cannon firing 1,800 rounds per minute. The second is a 40mm L-60 Boffers at 100 rounds per minute for light armor. The third is a 105mm M142 howitzer, a literal artillery piece in the side of an aircraft. It fires 33-pound shells at 6 to 10 rounds per minute, which is what just punched through the BMP hatch. That constant banking orbit is called a pylon turn. The aircraft pivots around an imaginary pole through the target on the ground. The fire control computer handles lead, drift, ballistic drop, wind, and aircraft motion. The aircraft hovers in a tight arc, but the rounds go straight to the crosshairs. For the Wagner dismounts pushing through the wreckage at 700 meters, the rounds don't stop coming. The sensor operator catches a glint off something in the BMP wreckage west of the column. Wagner has set up an anti-tank team in the same kind of cover the Igla crew used. 2 figures, 1 tube, watching the friendly berm. The 105mm shifts targets and the team disperses. Then the 25mm jams, mid-burst, halfway through engaging the next cluster of dismounts. Sustained firing heats the rounds, a casing deforms, and the action ceases. Up in the gun bay, a crewman is already on it, but the dismounts are moving, and the combat controller has 30 fighters inside 500 meters and closing. The 40mm boffers pick up the slack. Slower cyclic rate, a round and a half per second instead of 30, but each shell is the size of a beer can full of high explosive. The boffers walks across the dismount's position in evenly spaced detonations until the column stalls. 12 seconds later, the 25mm is back online. The whole stoppage lasted less than half a minute. The combat controller comes back on. Danger close. 200 meters, my position. Bearing 180. A cluster of dismounts has crawled up to the wadi within a football field range of the friendly berm. The math on the AC-130's fire control is the difference between the round landing on the right side of 200 meters or the wrong side. The crew confirms coordinates twice. The pilot trims the bank angle, and the 105mm fires once. The round lands at 203 meters. Grim 1-1 has been on station 90 minutes and is burning through its tanker margin. 20 minutes left before peeling off for the KC-135 North. 20 minutes is enough. But 300 miles to the west, a different problem is starting to form. At 35,000 feet, two F-22A Raptors orbit in a racetrack pattern 40 miles west of the battle. Their APG-77 radars running passive, receiving everything, transmitting nothing. At 0048 hours, an AWACS controller over Iraq calls a track. AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, is a Boeing 707 with a giant radar disc bolted to its back, calling the shots on who is where in the airspace. Two contacts are climbing out of Hmeimim Air Base on the Mediterranean coast, roughly 300 miles west, bearing east, type unknown. The lead F-22 pilot brings his APG-77 active for one sweep. Both contacts paint clean, strike aircraft sized, climbing through 18,000 feet, accelerating. If those Russian jets engage, this becomes the first U.S.-Russia air combat since Korea. The data drops into Link 16, the military's tactical data network, and every American aircraft over Khasham now knows two identified Russian aircraft are 25 minutes out. On the ground, the radio goes quiet. F-15Es hold their bombs while Grim 1-1 keeps orbiting and shooting, and every radio operator on the net waits for the next call from AWACS. The F-22s aren't here to hit ground targets. They're here in case anyone else shows up. The Russian pilots have no idea they were just illuminated. That is the F-22's whole job. A $150 million aircraft whose entire purpose tonight is to sit in the dark and make sure nobody else joins the party. Most expensive bouncer in military history, and he never had to throw a punch. The AN/APG-77 radar tracks fighter-sized targets past 100 nautical miles, about LA to San Diego, and the Russians' warning gear can't even hear it until well inside fighting range. Imagine the biggest, quietest guy in the bar. Nobody knows he's an off-duty bouncer until somebody starts something. The two contacts turn out to be Su-24 fencers, Russian strike aircraft, not air superiority fighters. They level off at 28,000 feet, turn south, and track down the Mediterranean coast towards Lebanon. Maybe routine patrol. Maybe someone in the Russian chain of command saw the picture forming over Khasham and decided 500 Wagner mercenaries weren't worth starting World War III. Either way, for 11 minutes, two Russian jets flew toward 30 Americans on a berm. The only thing between a ground skirmish and a superpower air war was a pair of F-22s that Russia never knew were there. Then the radios open back up, and four F-15E Strike Eagles scream in from altitude. GBU-31 JDAMs drop onto Wagner's command post and ammo dump 4 kilometers behind the column. Joint direct attack munitions. Dumb bombs with a GPS guidance kit on the tail that turns a stupid bomb into a smart one for 30 grand apiece. What nobody on that battlefield knows yet is that the column has already lost. They just haven't been told. Grim 1-1 on his 6th orbit walks 105mm rounds down the length of what's left of the armored column. The fire control computer holds the crosshairs on the line of vehicles as the aircraft banks, and the howitzer fires, recovers, and fires again. From the outpost berm, the combat controller watches a strobe light pattern of impact flashes walking from north to south along a 600-meter stretch of dirt road. Then at 0100, the Quick Reaction Force reaches the outpost. 16 Marines in Green Berets in 4 MRAPs armored trucks built to shrug off roadside bombs. They drove blacked out for 20 miles on night vision, then unload javelins, 50 cal ammunition, and fresh radios. The closest Wagner vehicle that still runs is 2 kilometers away and reversing. The remaining vehicles withdraw west toward the Euphrates. Grim 1-1 keeps tracking, but the rules of engagement say no chase once they stop coming for the outpost. The Spooky watches them leave as all 30 Americans are still standing. If you want to see the U.S. blow up something even bigger, then watch that video next. Bye for now.